There is a 67-word statement called Balfour Declaration. This statement can answer many basic questions about Israel. Because Israel is a new country, the government is relatively new, and some people from different parts of the world are generally scattered in an organized manner. Coming to a new place, creating a new country, saying that this is our country, and the world has accepted this to a great extent. Today, it may be very natural for us that America, England, and the great powers support Israel, but what happened? What happened? That such a support was formed? The Balfour Declaration explains a lot of this. I am Ali Bandari, and this YouTube channel is free. Let's go to the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was the name of a gentleman who was a politician in Britain at the beginning of the 20th century. The Great War of the First World War issued and officially supported in this statement the idea that the Jewish people should settle in Palestine, which was a region in the Ottoman Empire. At that time, the population was mainly Muslim, then there were some Christians, and a minority of Jews. So the Balfour Declaration, when was it issued? Who issued it in 1917? At the end of World War I. The British government. But why did this matter at all? We usually heard that it was the Second World War and the Holocaust and Hitler that finally gave legitimacy to Israel, that is 1948. This is the story of the Balfour Declaration, but it was 30 years before that. Why could such an idea gain political support at that time? In order to understand this, we need to know the background of the story. The background of the story also goes back to Zionism. The roots of Zionism go back to the 19th century. In the 19th century, some Jews in Europe became supporters of the idea that Judaism is not just our religion. Being a Jew, ethnic identity, and our national identity is our national identity. Be careful when they say that. Although there are Jews living in many countries, they are a minority everywhere. They are also a small minority. They usually do not have a country anywhere, but in this situation, at the same time, there is a wave of anti-Semitism in Russia formed. When will some Jews start going to the land of Palestine? 1880. In 1896, at the end of the 19th century, a Jewish journalist named Mr. Theodor Herzl from Austria-Hungary comes and publishes an article, a text, called The Jewish State, and says that the only solution to the Jewish problem is for us Jews to create our own state, establish our own government. The Jewish problem was a problem in the 18th century, 19th century, and the first half of the 20th century. It was really one of the fundamental issues in Europe. Thinkers were commenting on it. What is wrong with this Jewish minority in this Christian continent? Should we do legally, socially, economically, and politically? It was the subject of intellectual debate for several decades. This gentleman gave an idea and said that the solution is for us Jews to have a Jewish government. A year later, he came and founded the Zionism Foundation. The first meeting of the foundation also came back with the same discussion. It was brought up to the Promised Land, or the land of Palestine, saying that we should go and establish a Jewish state in Palestine. Support and talking about these things. Of course, this gentleman died in 1904. And he did not give the idea that he had given, and the Zionist movement that he had built in his life to see that it is taking off and getting a life, and these are the people who later he became the head of the Zionist Foundation. He was Weizmann. One of his important plans was to get international support for his idea in the region where they want to go. Well, the majority of them are Muslims. Nothing There are also Christians who are Catholics. They have the support of France, the Orthodox have the support of Russia. Britain is a bit disunited here. And at that time Britain itself has a problem with the Jews. They don't want them to go there and look for a place for them. For example, one option was that they said that we have a place in East Africa. Britain said, in Uganda, let's go there. The founder of Zionism was also satisfied, as if having a Jewish government was the main solution for him. At this stage, British support was also being obtained, but his successor, who was an opponent of the idea, said, no, what is Africa, what is Uganda? Jerusalem is like London for us, for you Brits, we have to go to Palestine. In short, the official support of the British government was gradually gained. Of course, there are many stories, we don't want to tell that story now, that's why we are cutting it short. Like this, but the British government became a supporter of the idea that the Jews in Palestine, the Jewish state was formed there. In 1914, war broke out. World War I started in Europe, France, England and Russia on one side, Germany and Austria, Hungary on the other. The same front of Germany. When the Ottomans came in the war, the supporters of the Zionists also took power in the British government. Mr. Balfour, whose name is on this statement, was not the Prime Minister at that time, he was the opposition party of the government, but he was an important politician. They used to tell Hussein, the ruler of Mecca, sir, come and rebel against the Ottomans. Let's remember Hijaz, and all the places that are now Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, Lebanon, etc., all of which were in the Ottoman Empire. You should also attack the Ottomans. The British said to this ruler of Mecca, come and rebel. We promise in return that when we overthrow the Ottomans, we will give you Arabs independence. At all, we will give you borders. At all parts of Syria that are west of Damascus, such as Homs, Aleppo, Hama, and so on, we will give the rest of it to you. This later, of course, became a bit of a problem, because Palestine is also west of Damascus, but, well, it was not specifically named there. We have already written about this agreement with Hussein, the ruler of Mecca, that in the second half of the war, that is, from 1916 to 1918, two important events took place, two events that were very key to determining the fate of Palestine. The first thing that happened was that the Sykes-Picot contract was signed, a contract that was confidential at first, but it specified that after the end of the war, how are Britain and France going to divide the Arab lands between them? How will the Ottoman remains be divided? The Sykes-Picot Agreement also said that Palestine should be an international territory. Now you have this. In Britain, the government changed, and Mr. Balfour became the foreign minister, and on the contrary of the previous government, which said that we should move the Ottomans forward with reforms and such. Let's fix it, they said. No, the Ottoman work cannot be fixed with reforms. After the war, we have to take it piece by piece, break it down, and after his work, he also put pressure behind the military forces, yes, in order to gain the support of public opinion in Britain. People should be happy, let's go and make a good victory in that region. That is, what should we do against Ottomans? We should take Palestine and bring ourselves to Jerusalem. Here, the British government had to manage three interest groups, both the French and the Arabs. Who was negotiating with the Zionists in the government? The foreign minister, who was the same Mr. Balfour, whom we said that the Zionists had already talked to him. Balfour now has to come and talk to Weizmann, who was the new leader of the Zionist Foundation. They had negotiated a lot before that, but they always say that those negotiations were unofficial, completely covered up. There were other negotiations and other things. Now it was becoming official. Britain took the form here and said that it is better for you to agree with us than to go and agree with America or with France, and we will agree on these things. We, Britain, will go to the rest of them, we will get their support for you. At the same time, he told Sykes, who was on behalf of Britain, in the Sykes-Picot Agreement, that without talking about the plans of the Zionists, keep France with us as an ally, France with us. Stay, but don't make any more promises to these Arab sheiks about the Arab lands. Until then, the French were based on the Sykes-Picot Agreement. They were fighting on the Western Front. Because the British had a physical presence in Egypt as a colony, Italy also had a strong presence. Of course, it was not present at all in the Middle East front. In short, the French were a little absent. Again, Sykes-Picot started to negotiate and talk with each other, and Britain he began to gradually inject the idea of supporting Zionism into French politicians. At the end of the war, when Britain gradually convinced France to remember to support Jewish rights in Palestine, in the negotiations that he had there, he also got the support of the Americans. Of course, we don't really have the details, we are going to summarize the whole thing, and we will reject this support of the Americans. The basis of this is that one of the judges of the Supreme Court, who was very close to President Wilson, is a high-ranking Zionist himself. It was for him at that time, but anyway, after the previous groundwork and these official and diplomatic missions of the British, there was an opportunity to make the negotiations public and to make the support public. What did Balfour write in the statement? In November 1917, the Balfour Declaration was published. Months of intense negotiations. The declaration is no more than 67 words. Dozens of books, articles, studies, etc., now about the interpretation of the declaration and the interpretation of its words. From that time until now, but its words, the brain of its words, there are 4 topics. One says that a national home for the Jews should be built in Palestine. I am saying it literally. The fact that he did not say that the Jewish government said a national home for the Jews is deliberately dumb. In Palestine, it is not clear what exactly it means. I mean, where? What he is not saying is that he is not saying that Palestine should become a Jewish state. He is saying that a house is going to be built in Palestine for the Jews, or for example, he is saying that the Jews living in Palestine should have citizenship rights, the Jews living in Palestine should have religious rights. Or he is saying that the rights of Jews who are outside of Palestine, no one has the right to attack. This Balfour statement. You can see that the language is really dumb, it is not accurate. And it seems that it was written like that on purpose. The generality is much more important than the details. The generality was an indication of British support for the Zionist ideas, and the reactions to it were more or less the same. It was expected that the Jews were very welcoming, especially the Zionists. It was the first time that an international support had been formed for the Jewish community. The rate of Zionization of the Jews increased a lot. In America alone, the members of the Zionist community increased by 20 times in a short period of time. On the other hand, the Palestinians, the Arabs, strongly protested. The Palestinians. What? The Arabs outside of Palestine also said that we were supposed to come and reign ourselves. What happened to Palestine? They had promised us, they felt betrayed. The initial reception of the statement was very bad in this part of the world, but the statement became an important statement, and the same Balfour statement created a tension that is still going on after 100 years, for many years, with the Zionists. On the one hand, they wanted to establish a Jewish state for the Palestinians. On the other hand, they wanted to limit the immigration of Jews to their own country. They wanted to prevent the state from being formed. And then, after the Second World War, the situation became much worse. The main reason for its publication was that it caused this most intractable and longest conflict in the world to happen. If you were asked, where is the statement itself now? The text of the statement. The original text of the statement is in the British Museum and is kept in the British Library. This was a summary of what I read about the Balfour Declaration on its English Wikipedia page. If you want to learn something new in 8 minutes, 10 minutes, subscribe to our channel. Here we are doing such curiosities.